Hey there, here Dr. Amanda, your host at the Neurophania Podcast, a show for hard talks where we share vision and actionable steps for a more expanded, joyful, soulful humanity. I am so glad to have you here and thank you for being part of the Neurophania mission. Hello, my beautiful Neurophaniers. Welcome to one more episode of the Neurophania Podcast. Our guest today, Julian Guderley, is on his quest to identify, interview, and collaboratively empower the key players of the regenerative movement. His podcast, Green Planet, Blue Planet, which by the way was recently featured among the top 10s by Business Insiders, demonstrates what it takes for visionaries, creators, and leaders to connect with purpose, with themselves, and the environment. Welcome, Julian.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm stoked to be here with you today. And thanks for pronouncing my name Julian. That's I rarely hear that anymore, and I like it.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I'm not even aware that because I Spanicize everything.
Spanicize everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So welcome. Thank you for being my guest. I'm truly honored. You have been kindly guiding me through this process. So it's very exciting for me of having you today. I know that you are a big fan of the environment and sustainability. But first, I would like you to share with the Neurophaniers how could you tell what is your story behind what brought you to this path, or were you already connected with nature?
Yeah, thank you. I love that question. What brought me to the path I'm on? I mean, where to start? I could tell a whole lot about my life story and different chapters, but I think what's important to share for me is that we've reached a point in our evolution as a species or as a society, however someone wants to identify as a human being, where the mistakes of the past or the choices of the past and the consequences that are carried out into the current now and the future are becoming more and more obvious, with the great pollution, with climate change, with just the way we're treating each other and the planet, and for that matter ultimately ourselves. And so for me, that really clicked. I think like the biggest aha moment that's really worth sharing in a podcast was about almost a decade ago now, when back in the day I was still working as an event manager and had a lot of responsibility for a big Bavarian car company, BMW Cars, and was hosting an event series on the west coast of Canada. And we were hosting this for like multiple months. Actually, we're touring the country, and we had lots and lots of Beamers and Minis driving around. I remember that. And then one day, someone drove up to this parking lot that we transformed into a racetrack. That's really what we did. And then we gave people experiences in those cars. Someone drove up with an electric vehicle. Oh, wow. And that's like 10 years ago. So I don't know, maybe 2010, 2011, so something like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a Tesla. It was one of those, I believe Fiker was the name of the brand. And he drives up with his car all the way close to the house. And, I was the responsible event manager at the time. So I was like, hey, man, what's up? And like, what, it was kind of unconventionally close to the house, the way he parked. And so then he like popped something out of his trunk or somewhere out of his car. And there was a cable and handed it to me. And he was like, hey, can you plug this in? And because we were hosting this event for BMW and Mini, and they didn't have any electric vehicles at that time, that never happened before. Oh. And the moment that I actually received that cable and I had it in my hand, I'm like, yep, I'm gonna plug that in now, no big deal. I was like, wow, how come that values is maybe one thing, and thinking and having ideas is another thing, but how come I still embody and support with my own energy an industry that, even though it still supports us in some really positive ways, largely has a very big shadow side, namely oil and the combustion engine and our dependency on oil, that at the very minimum, I think we could say, is not set for the long future. So how could I still be supporting that? That kind of just dropped in for me in the moment, I viscerally held this cable. And so I'm telling the story because the week after I quit my job, I just said, it's enough. And I had no idea what I'm going to do. Literally no idea. I had what now seems to me like very little savings
Yeah.
and just went with it.
Wow, that's impressive. And it's also great that you were able to connect with that sense of purpose that you felt in that moment and also take action. And but something that I'm always not curious, but it's something that I have very present is like, okay, this decision is from love or is from fear. Absolutely no question that decision was from love. But I was wondering, how did you put yourself in a mental state of being that you were able to make that decision like this? Because I don't think that many people are in a position like, oh, I really see this vision, I have this purpose, but quitting my secure job, maybe that later. How did you got to the point that you were just able to jump into that purpose and that vision without
Yeah,
fear,
that's the perfect
with that
follow-up
trust
question,
in
really.
life?
Yeah. Well, to be absolutely honest, I did not have any clear vision or plan of purpose at that point. There was a healthy amount of courage and an unhealthy amount of thinking I had something figured out so I could just do it and dare. Now, that's what I'd say now, but back then it was just the perfect mix of what I needed to like make that jump. And I'll admit, I've watched that pattern in myself. I'm definitely um, on the team, let's dare to build something new, and sometimes maybe prematurely or naively so. And over my lifetime, I'm learning those tools better and better, and just wait for what's next, but back then definitely there was just a lot of courage and the clarity that is the right step. Now the important piece to say and to admit and to really share is that the next 8 months after that, I didn't do anything that we would regularly call a job, and that worked for me because of the savings I had, but also because I was kind of letting myself drift in reflection and started to listen to what you just called purpose and what you just called like a calling. And in the beginning I had no idea where that's going to take me, and it took me 6 to 8 months to really listen, to understand, okay, now I know what the next thing I'm going to do is, as a business, as a job, as a expression of my creative energy.
Yeah, that reminds me at least that how I have made some steps in my life, like ignorance is bliss. Sometimes you just like don't really know where are you getting into, but you just do it because you just feel the impulse, and then from them you figure it out. So it's really magic. I think that's the song where magic happens. So thank you for sharing that. And um I have also some
Let
questions.
me
So
add something to that though, Amanda. Let me add something, because I'm not sure if I would like 100% subscribe to the magic zone is where ignorance is bliss. I
okay.
think you're right that there's something about that zone that is like interesting. There was a healthy amount of ignorance there, to like ignoring that it would be dangerous, maybe that maybe I'll never find a job again. Definitely ignored that notion, right? But at the same time, I think I'm going to tell you that this is more like a philosophical, spiritual belief, but I'm going to tell you the true feeling. What I was understanding at this point, and now has become a daily practice and a trust, and really faith is the right word, is that the miracle of life, the if you go back to all the things that happened since the beginning of the universe as we know it, or everything that happened today, like the sun is rising, aka we're orbiting around the sun,
Mm-hmm.
right? These are not things that I am achieving or any other human being is achieving. That's the miracle of life. It's consistently creating, and that form of consistently creating, you know, while it might not always be fair and what everyone likes, but there is something about this force that is nonstop and that actually wants to expand into well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when people say they're just going with the flow, it's kind of they're surfing that wave. And going with the flow is also something that maybe that alone isn't enough. There needs a lot more context to really like harness what is your individual kind of way of flow. But ultimately, that's what I'm trying to say is I had a healthy amount of ignorance and just said yes or goodbye, I'm going to quit. And then at the same time, I started to learn, listen, and trust that this creative energy that is what is all of life, that's happening without me, and it actually regularly happens in my favor.
Thank you so much for making that note, because really makes a difference and create a lot of value. And yeah, definitely reframes that what I said before. So thank you for that. So can you tell us about Green Planet, Blue Planet, the purpose, the value behind your work?
Yeah. You ask amazing questions. I'm so glad that we're doing this right now.
I just go deep.
Yeah, you go deep right away, and there's like no left or right. That's good. So full all in. Green Planet, Blue Planet for me started like like a vision state where I in extended meditation again and again would see the planet in a healthy state. Like you could say I'm from the future, and at some point that's going to be real, or we could just say I had an out of body experience or a dream, whatever we want to call it. It's that feeling came to me over and over and over again. And at some point I said, okay, what is this dream in a pragmatic way, like grounded in a way that I can relate it to other people? What's my contribution to it? And then I realized, like recycling doesn't quite cut it. Buying less, which, I'm a minimalist to a degree. I definitely have stuff, but I don't need new stuff all the time. That also doesn't fully cut it. I think what came to me was that there's a lot of work to do to close this gap between some of the really horrific scenarios about the environment, about the way humans are treating each other, themselves, and the planet, and this utopian vision that the planet could be green, like a healthy flora and fauna, and blue, like healthy waters. And so between that gap, if it's a timeline, like we need maybe 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, or we need more money or whatever it is, there's humans taking action, okay? And so that's how I kind of started taking this vision, which was just a beautiful, delicious state of connecting to something in my inner being, to a pragmatic kind of journey. And at some point I said, okay, let me start interviewing people. And I got to add this point. There was a lot of frustration in me at this point a few years ago about how doomsday the climate narrative is. I don't know if you can relate, like it's so dark. When you hear the word climate or environment, people want to barf, because it's like, oh my God, there it goes again. We're doomed. We're fucked.
Oh yeah.
The planet is going to go under. Like that voice and that narrative in our society, in our media, is so strong at this point, which to a degree, maybe we need to be clear of the facts and what's happening. I'm a big fan of that. But at the same time, when the narrative becomes overpowering, it doesn't allow the action takers and those who could take action to be engaged. I'll say that. And so that's really the quest I started on. And then I said to myself, okay, I'm going to interview some of the world's most, not necessarily famous, but powerful social impact generators. People that, as they live the life they live, as they choose what they're choosing, they're creating impact that is extraordinary. Yeah. An impact towards closing this gap between the reality of environment and how humans treat each other, themselves, and the planet, and a state of the world that allows everyone to thrive, that allows us to, live in a reality that is rich and teeming with life, with biodiversity, and with clean waters.
Yeah, I absolutely relate with what you said before about this. You care about the environment. It's kind of like even painful sometimes, like seeing everything that's happening. And I remember years ago having this feeling of it's so overwhelming, it's coming, like I cannot get it, it's happening, and this overwhelming definitely paralyze you. So it's a great point. But since life, like now we are seeing a lot of people that is really getting consciousness about this. But you mentioned it before, what would it take to close the gap? And I wanted to bring one concept, and I would like to know, how do you resonate with that concept? It's about this feeling, sensation of being oneness with nature, when we really perceive, understand that we are not above, below, just one. And how do you think human beings, fellow human beings, having that perception in their mind could contribute for the environment? But also I want to ask you your personal experiences with feeling that inner knowing of, I am one with nature, I am just part of this.
So how do I personally connect with that feeling, and then what can people do to contribute to the environment? So I think what I've learned over the last decade or so is that it's important to understand I know nothing, meaning to find access to humility, that even when I have figured something out today, or can celebrate a big win or a big deal today, that tomorrow that is not necessarily metaphorically what I can rest on, but every day anew, I'm here to learn, I'm here to serve. And so from that attitude, sometimes I'm embodying it more, sometimes I'm embodying it a bit less, but from that attitude, I think for me, there's a myriad of practices that have developed. One is silence and stillness, which is meditation daily for years and years. And when I don't do it, I feel different, and I don't feel as coherent. That goes hand in hand with breath meditation and breath work, which I also teach. Definitely, I would say there is a credit to plant medicine that I think is important to mention. It's a very deep topic, and I think it's very important to practice with respect, context, intention, and initiation. But we know now also scientifically there's tremendous healing benefits from, let's say, for example, psilocybin mushrooms. And so there are more practices, like from writing and journaling to just conscious relating and consistently growing as a person. But I think that's what helps me connect with nature regularly. My number one favorite practice, and that's what I did earlier this morning actually, is touching or connecting with a tree in a way that is like takes me out of the ordinary perception. So what I mean with that is like literal tree hugging, but like let's go a bit deeper than the claim, the label, or the judgment, but like feeling that a tree is not a thing but a living being. There's something energetically that calms me down. So definitely going to out myself as a tree hugger. So those are some of my practices, and that's how I feel. That's how I feel the planet. Very real. Also, crystals are fun. I'm happening to hold one for those of you who are watching the video. Yeah, and then what can people do to contribute to the environment? Oh man, that's a loaded question. Can we just address that that's a loaded question?
Yeah, basically, so this question is because I think about this in my life, right? And I'm like, if people, so if we could understand how geometry, so what have in common quantum physics, geometry, human beings, and the environment, and nature, and plants, and we could integrate those things, we could get, because basically I'm this analytical person that need to make sense out of things. So for me, the way of making sense of we are one with nature comes with geometry, and yeah, mostly geometry, and that the sense that we are just animals at the end of the day. So we are a part of this. So I feel that if we had this understanding, we will be able to connect more with nature, and that will just change the way we perceive others, the planet, ourselves, our soul, it's just like I feel this just has like it's a potent generator of change, that concept.
You're speaking about concepts that are indigenous, right? Like Ubuntu or like that are like as I am, you are, or as I am, like we are, right? So that what I do to nature, let's say if I buy and make a whole bunch of plastic and, every 2 years I get a new phone and then dump that in a landfill, that I'm actually not doing this just to nature. I'm also doing that to myself, actually. I think that's very beautiful and powerful, and I totally agree. And at the same time, that alone is not enough to like still the beast that humanity currently still is. I think we got to just learn to be really honest about ourselves there. That just like we've had wars on this planet, we're powerful creators and we're powerful destroyers. And as we're powerful destroyers, that comes with responsibility. So just like, if you have a knife in your kitchen, that doesn't make you a dangerous person. You learn how to use the tool that is the knife. And so it's the same with, let's say, nuclear energy or plastic, right? Or petroleum and oil. And so far, I don't think we fully learned that lesson. And I don't think we fully committed to that pathway. And so I think that is something, I happen to be connected and be somewhat pushing on that since years as well, that we bring those people together who can actually make the change, who can either match up with the most powerful people of the world or who are some of the most powerful people in the world, so that the inequality and the inequilibrium about money and power at some point shifts towards the favor of nature and the favor of people. And it's this old, very famous triple bottom line, like people, planet, and then profit. And so I think there is just to answer your original question as well, like there are two forces in my eyes, and so those two forces, they're somewhat opposing, but they're meant to come together. And one is the top down, so that the currently powerful are somewhat reshaping or have to recommit to clear action. And so just for the protocol, this is a recorded conversation, it's happening way too slow, right? And so there needs to be more focus on that. And then at the same time, we as consumers and we as average Joe and Jane, we also have our part to play in that. And so yes, I mean, consumption and consuming less, I think, is a part of it. I think we do cross a line where we call each other out. I don't think call out culture helps anyone. We don't need a consumption police. And so it's a little bit of both, right? Like the pressure from the people as well as the pressure from the leadership.
It's all about self-responsibility and self-ownership, and absolutely. And I mean, I was not familiar with this. While I have heard the name Ubuntu, I was not familiar what that means. And definitely, yeah, I mean, we will be hypocritical because we have an iPhone, right? So
exactly,
definitely like a balance and be realistic and pragmatic about it. So
I'll give you more examples though, because I want people that are listening to be like, okay, so what are the pragmatic things that, let's say, Julian says or recommends or knows about, or has his own hands in the soil. And so that's really it. I think it comes down to the very bottom line of the Green Planet, Blue Planet vision is healthy soil, clean waters. And so healthy soil, if you look at our general agriculture industry with pesticides and that whole game, that game doesn't work. Like watch the documentary Kiss the Ground on Netflix, for example. It's literally toxic gases that we repurpose and labeled as pesticides to destroy the health of our soil. And we know from decades of science that soil health and the biodiversity in the soil is a pivotal part of our planet's health and equilibrium, and therefore also for our personal health and immune system. So healthy soil, and that would mean if you're super called to quit your job or to pivot, or if you've saved up for years and you're ready to commit to something else, finding people that are already doing this, regenerating the land. Recently, I had John Leo on the podcast, who is one of the founders of the regeneration camps. So literally regeneration camps where people can come together to make soil, to not just compost and make soil, but also live on the land, or share access to land in a way that allows for regenerating soil. Another one that a recent interview guest at Green Planet, Blue Planet was makesoil.org, where anyone, no matter in which city you live, can start a soil making site. Those are very micro steps, but they are important.
Yeah.
On the other side, I think, look, for me, I've realized that I have a responsibility in the way, in the way I walk my own talk. And so hosting a podcast for me is really a way to weave a connection between those people I interview, make sure that beyond just hosting a conversation with them, I really nourish a relationship, and through that relationship, am in some way, shape, or form able to empower them again. Now, that's my unique piece for now. That's going to change over the next year, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Into more impact or more career or expression, whatever we want to call it. Everyone listening, like you listening right now, that's what you have to find for yourself. And it doesn't have to mean that you do what I did and quit your regular job. It could also be that you find a way how you can embody those values in the current environment you're living in, you're practicing in, you're working in. And so that's the fun part about it. Like, no one necessarily knows all the answers. And this is the important part of it, especially if you think of Corona right now and the coronavirus experience. Like, critical thinking and thinking your own thoughts is highly encouraged.
Please.
Right? And so that also goes for the way you apply your purpose. Like, don't let anyone else tell you. Absolutely. Research, ask, and then make up your own choice. And when you embody that with determination and commitment, I'm pretty sure something good's going to happen out of it.
Yeah, that's always something that I say, like, do your own research, inform yourself, and empower yourself from love and sovereignty, and go with that. Go with what it feels right for you. But yes, definitely these times that are coming are about that and empowering, and we will be discussing that later in episodes from the podcast. But I'm very happy that you brought up the concept of aligning with our values, because I do know that you also do coaching sessions, and that is one of the key gifts that you give to the people that you help, is helping them to really align with what your deep values are, and from that with your purpose. So if you could give some maybe pragmatic, actionable steps to my listeners, to our listeners today, to get started with that, what would you say?
I think that's a great last piece to your question there, just to get started. And so for me, who has been practicing and living that since years and years, it's every day I just get started. That's like tip number one. Every day, just get started. Like, come back to that, what lights you up. If you're tired, learn to rest, right? We all have to do that. And then when we're rested, get back to what lights you up. And so in a pragmatic way, have a journal, start having a relationship with your internal self. Definitely meditate. Those are like absolute no-brainers, like entry level must-dos if you want to start transforming your patterns into what is effective and serves you to be successful. Now, the next piece is define what successful means to you. And then don't be surprised if after you do that, you realize, oh, wow, it doesn't mean what it means for someone else. Yeah. And once you know what that means for you, now it's much easier to say, okay, well, how can I honor that? How can I allow myself to live what I name successful? Because remember I said earlier, when we're so worthy, like the miracle of creation doesn't stop at your birth, you know? It's not like, oh, yeah, no, everything's a miracle, but not the humans. That's just not how it works. And so when you allow yourself to understand what success is for you, because, you know, even though as a child, maybe I thought I want to be a soccer player, but that's, I mean, I played soccer all my life. I'm a soccer player, you know, but I don't need to be a famous sports star or athlete. And when I don't meet that, I don't need to, you know, fret that I didn't meet that. And I think that's what a lot of people go through, is that they have these ideals about success that are externalized from what they can achieve. So bring it back into who you are. And then from there are so many tools. And one that I love and that I've kind of been playing with for years is this Japanese concept of purpose, or ikigai, and raison d'être, like your reason for being. And so a formulation of that I've come up with over the last year that I'd love to share right now is about knowing yourself and learning to maneuver within your own consciousness in that sense. So when you need to rest, you understand that and you can rest. When you have extra energy, you understand that and you're able to maybe make that one phone call that you didn't know connects you to more power, to more purpose, to a next interview partner, to a next job, to a next income, to a next paycheck, right? And so there's four kind of leaves to it, and leaves in a metaphorical sense, or four bubbles, right? For those of you who are listening to this only, and I'm not seeing the video, I'm kind of making bubbles with my hand here, and so, or circles. And so it's knowing your comfort zone, very important. Often the comfort zone gets totally trashed as this like bad place where nothing good ever happens. I tend to disagree with it. I do believe there is a lazy part of our comfort zone, and everyone knows about themselves which part that is. So look in the mirror, get that part checked in with yourself. But then there's a part of the comfort zone which is how it works right now for us. That's where we're at. That's how we act every day. It feels comfortable, right? And so a next bubble would be where we have a strength zone. So that's the things that make us look good, that our expertise, that our skill, our profession, what we apprenticed in. And so that those two, they overlap. Where your strength zone overlaps with your comfort zone, kind of just above where you get out of your lazy, but where you're still comfortable.
Yeah.
There's something magic there. And I could go on and on about this quite a bit longer, but just that little distinction. So when you start learning that about yourself, where am I comfortable? When does this turn to lazy? And when does it turn into like creative expression? Now, maybe you experience that when you're singing. Maybe you experience that when you're kicking a ball or playing basketball, or maybe you experience that when you're surfing. Maybe you even experience it when you're reading a book or doing research, right? Everyone's different. But somewhere there is something that you are good at, that you enjoy doing, that you're able to comfortably do it every day. And when you do something comfortably every day, there's two things that come out. One is, at some point, maybe boredom, right? Because you're going to do it every day. It's so comfortable. But the other one is mastery. Now, it takes a lot of hours and experience to reach the level of mastery with anything. And, people talk about the classical 10,000 hours and so forth. But where you're comfortable enough to do it every day, or to do it every week, which is a rhythm that is palpable, that has traction, right? Like a job, you do it every week, 4 or 5 days a week. That's what we identify as a job. But where you're also strong enough to do something that makes a difference, that's the zone where you regularly want to be living in, coming from, having conversations from, picking up that phone, making that extra phone call, showing up, supporting a project, right? Raising funds, whatever it is that you need to do for your next step. And so you asked for like where to begin. I think that's where I would begin.
Wow, that's powerful. So I would like just to summarize to see if I got it well, and also for the listeners. So first, it starts to observing our comfort zone and just going a little bit more, but with not stretching that much. And secondly, using that energy that learn to listen that energy to make actions out of those moments, and acknowledge also when we need to rest or not. And when we get there and we have practices like journaling, meditation, inner self listening to ourselves, at some point from that state of being, things happen because we kind of like go with that flow. That's
absolutely. And if you're listening to this right now and you're like, whatever, that's easy for him to say, I hate my job and I go there every day.
Yeah.
Then that's in a relationship with yourself. If you journal about that for a few weeks, if you meditate on this for a few weeks, at some point you'll be like, well, fuck this was enough. Right. And so that feeling is I mean, it's unfortunate for the moment, but over long, that's a really good feeling because it creates a lot of opportunity.
Yes.
I want to add one more thing, Amanda, because thanks for recapping that. You totally got it. There's more to that matrix. So there's actually 4, not just 2. So comfort and strength are 2. The other 2 are genius zone and your blind spot. Now, remember we talked about the comfort zone?
Yeah.
Where the comfort zone is lazy and turns into like the shadow of the comfort zone, that's where it overlaps with your blind spot. That's stuff we don't usually know about ourselves, but our mom knows, our dad knows, our best friends know, our partners know, right? It's where we're like doing something that is, just holding us back. And we kind of know about it, but we kind of don't know about it.
Yeah.
That's best to do in a form of coaching, a form of counseling, in a form of, asking honest questions to those people in your life that are closest. Now, when you become aware of that, you have the opportunity to change something about it. And on the other side, where the genius zone is, the genius zone actually is not connected to your comfort zone at all. In the matrix of 4, it's connected to the strength and the blind spot, because something about your genius comes out of the positive effect of your blind spot. It's like there's something genius about you that is so unique to you that you can't even see it yet.
Great.
And that's a mysterious good part about, life, is no one knows what's going to happen tomorrow, and truly everything is possible.
Yeah.
Where strength zone and genius zone overlap, that's a whole other powerhouse. So if I said earlier where comfort and strength overlap, and where we should totally make I can draw it up and share that for the show notes as well. And where strength zone and genius overlap, those are the powerhouses of driving purpose. Right? I could give a few examples, but I think I'll leave it for now, and let's see if that resonates with people.
Yeah.
That's where to start with the self inquiry and the process of getting to know oneself, so that I don't love every moment of every day the same way either. There are lots of moments where I'm like, oh, what am I going to do next? But that's a good experience, because that's what it propels me later on back into that place where I comfortably can rehearse a strong skill, or where I can connect back to my genius and practice, right? Like the example would be, if you are a professional singer, let's say you're a singer, songwriter, guitar player, it's not really necessarily only comfortable to play the guitar and sing regularly. So there is quite a bit of genius that wants to be activated, where that genius comes in with your strong suit of being there every day, of repeating it every day.
Yeah.
That's where magic happens. And every musician, every performer, every artist knows that there is a place where, if you don't practice at all, even every athlete knows that if you don't practice at all, you won't be as strong at your skill. You won't be as strong at your discipline.
And that's what the fun is.
I'd say so, yeah.
I also wanted to highlight, or like to be back also to the fact, to maybe like people that are just like, in the back of my mind, I have that I want to do this, and I'm doing this. I don't really enjoy, but I'm just okay. The moment that you start journaling, listening to yourself, writing, believe me, it's gonna come one moment that you are going to get so uncomfortable, so like that what you said, like you just go with that flow, with that love, and with that emotion, and that's where things happen. Because it just like feels whatever didn't feel like so true 2 months ago, after journaling and inner search, feels like so right and so real, that you just go and it's easy. So it's so
I'm going to relate that to what we talked about earlier, the environment. So there is that zone about our current state of human consciousness that includes all of us, and myself included, where we kind of lie to ourselves and we do some things that hold us back, and we already kind of know that. Journaling brings that out. Having a coach brings that out, right? That's the first time I hired a coach, and I called her for, I think, the second or third time, and I told the same excuses, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, I'm paying someone to tell them my excuses why I didn't do what I thought I wanted to do. Yeah. Something's wrong here. Like the missing link is me. And that connects back to how we treat the environment, how we wait for later to clean up our mess, or we wait for later until we change our habits, consumption, and the way we produce goods, or the way we subsidize dying industries like oil or banking, right? Those are dying industries. They need gone at some point, and they need evolution. That's a whole other interview and episode in itself. But waiting until 5 before midnight and then acting under pressure, kind of like a high school student before a big test, that's just not a wise and very effective way to operate when it's the health of the planet or the joy and happiness of your life experience.
And there is no way for later. And actually something that, so the times have changed so much. Before we had to wait until we were 50 years old to get that wisdom for life, but then we don't have the energy. Right now, there are so much knowledge, tools, information to literally go through everything that is stopping us back and transcend, transmute, release, and like put ourselves in that place where we really meant to be. Because and also that yes, I'm sorry, I was going to say something else, but I forgot, and I think that that's the main thing. Like really the time is now, and there are plenty of resources. So
time is always now. That's a very, very deep truth, and when we talk about it too long, it gets a little flat. But when we drop in, when we actually meditate, when we sit with someone whose presence is impeccable, it becomes very, very real.
Yeah, life is too short to just be like half satisfied with it. So, or with us first. Yeah,
I agree. You have great questions, Amanda. I like it. This is fun.
Yeah, I don't know. I just really like to get deep and get to know behind what is. So just for the other last question, one question that I had before, but actually you mentioned it, and I just wanted to point it up in case you want to add something else. I have you like you are very spiritual, but at the same time very pragmatic and practical, and that's great. Like so do you have any, so how does practical spirituality looks for you?
Yeah,
and
that's
I think
a
you
great
mentioned
question.
something before, but if you want to mention something else.
I'll just try to answer it really briefly. I think practical spirituality for me looks like living in inquiry, understanding that this is a play. It's like you could say it's like a game, and in this game, when you start asking questions to yourself, to the planet you live on, to consciousness at large, something happens. It's like life brings you the answers, and that might sound esoteric to some people, but living in inquiry is really, I think, the big link. And this is part of what I see in the green planet, blue planet vision, is there's something about how we as humans have a limited perspective. In our blind spot is the personality mind complex that only exists for a few decades. Meaning like one lifetime is somewhat short, right? And so acting from that understanding only might lead to consequences that aren't favoring life in general. So what I'm trying to say is spirituality for me is also to understand that there is an infinite stream of life that happens on this planet, way before me and way after me as Julian or Julian. And so there's something about that 7 generational notion and the indigenous way to relate to the planet and others that really deeply, it nourishes me. And so I've started to surrender to that perspective. What is our responsibility as ancestors of the future?
Wow, thank you. And you just remind me what I forgot before and has to do. So yesterday, while I was preparing for this, I came with a meditation from you, random, and I did it. And it was this hard, certain 11 minutes meditation. And the question was like, ask your heart where are you still lying to yourself? And that's, I think, like a great sentence to conclude our conversation today. Ask your heart, where are you still lying to yourself?
I love it. You definitely go deep, Amanda. I had a fun time with you. Thank you so much.
I don't know, I can stop myself.
Don't.
Okay. Thank you, Julian. Thank you for being my guest today. It's my honor, my pleasure, and hope the best for all your projects and for this podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand.
Thank you guys for making time and listening. For video version of the episode, watch and subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Neurophania Podcast. For closer interaction with myself, join us at the Neurophanics community at Patreon. In any case, see you on our next Sunday episode. As always, love for all.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.